Fake ones are useless. Don't come to the family meeting, okay? I quickly glanced at James, but he too had a mocking grin. Amy's real mom was so beautiful, not like this worn-out lady. Seeing my hurt expression, James looked annoyed. You were just here to take care of Amy, and now you're not needed anymore. Thanks for your service. True, we don't need a nanny anymore. Thanks, I guess. In that moment, something inside me snapped. Amy never really saw me as her mother after all. And neither did James. They both saw me as a convenient person to look after Amy. I don't consider people like that as family. All right, maybe it's best if you meet Amy's real mom. I muttered and dialed a number. My name is Jessica Peterson and I just turned 50. I've been working at a renowned trading company since I graduated. Thankfully, it's a pretty well-known company, so many recognize its name. I've been married to James for 20 years. I met James through a friend's introduction. When I noticed others getting married, I panicked and begged my friends to introduce me to someone. James struck me as a very serious person when we first met. He had black hair and wore glasses. He dressed modestly in a shirt and slacks. I've never liked flashy people, so I found James's demeanor comforting. After that, we went on many dates. Our dates mostly consisted of dinner after work. We never went to amusement parks or movie theaters. In fact, I hardly ever saw James on weekends. But I didn't mind. Even the briefest moments with James made me happy. And then, about 6 months after we met, James suddenly proposed to me, saying, "Would you consider dating me with the intention of getting married?" By that time, I had already fallen deeply in love with him. So when he asked, I was overjoyed. And I said, "Yes, I want to be with you, James." James seemed thrilled with my answer, and we started dating. Then he told me something I didn't know before. It was about his child. "I actually have a child from my previous marriage," he told me, looking apologetic. I was taken aback, not just by the news of his child, but also by the fact that he was divorced. The news of a child was particularly shocking. I'm sure my surprise was evident, but my feelings for James remained unchanged. So I smiled at him and said, "Is that so? Introduce me sometime. We're gonna live together once we're married, after all." James replied, "Thank you, Jessica. I was worried you'd hate me. You'd hate me if I told you the truth," James said with a very happy face, and then he hugged me tightly. Later on, James introduced me to his daughter Amy, just once. "This is the woman who's going to be your new mom," James told Amy. "Nice to meet you, I'm Jessica," I said with a smile, but Amy didn't react at all. She hid behind James and wouldn't even look at me. "I'm sorry, Amy seems a bit shy," James said apologetically. "It's okay, don't worry about it," I replied. And that's how my first meeting with Amy ended. 6 months later, we decided to get married. James was tight on money at the time, so we opted not to have a wedding ceremony. We just got legally married without a honeymoon. Any girl dreaming of a wedding would probably be upset. James sincerely apologized, but for me, as long as I had James, that was enough. So I smiled and forgave him. We're gonna have a happy married life. I thought about our future life together. Our newlywed life began, but it wasn't without its challenges. The main problem was Amy. She strongly resisted the idea of living with me. Until then, James and Amy had been living in a one-bedroom apartment, which was too small for the three of us. So we decided to move to a slightly larger condo. But for Amy, leaving the place she was familiar with seemed really hard. "I hate this place. I liked our old apartment." She cried out loudly. "Amy, the previous place was too small for all of us. Can't you understand?" James tried to reason with her. But Amy just continued to cry. "Why do I have to live with this old woman? I want to live with my real mom." She pointed at me and said, "Hey, Amy." James started to scold her, but I stopped him. "James, it's okay. I can understand it's hard for Amy to accept this new life all of a sudden. Just think of me as a roommate, okay?" I told Amy sincerely. "Jessica," James looked at me with concern. Amy just glared at me in silence. Despite the initial tense atmosphere with Amy, over time, her attitude softened. Initially, she'd say things like, "I don't want to live with this plain old woman. It's so embarrassing, I can't even tell my friends." But I understood Amy's feelings. It must be lonely not being able to live with her biological mother. When Amy was 5, James and his first wife divorced. That's why Amy's memories from that time are somewhat hazy. She would always look at pictures of her real mother, saying, "My real mom is so beautiful." She would flaunt the photos at me with a smug look. I figured she was probably just putting on a brave face to hide her loneliness. I tried my best to be patient and understanding with her. I always took time off work to attend school events even if Amy was against it. And of course, when she was sick, I stayed home to care for her. I sometimes received passive-aggressive comments from colleagues at work, but Amy always came first. To avoid being labeled as a plain old woman by Amy, I studied fashion magazines and changed my style. But with household expenses, I couldn't spend much on clothes. So I made do with budget-friendly outfits. On my days off, I would take Amy to places she liked. We visited amusement parks and famous tourist spots together. I did my best to ensure Amy never felt lonely. Still, she would often tell me, "You're so annoying, old lady." Honestly, I wanted to talk to James, Amy's real father, about it. But James was rarely at home. He was always busy with work. On the rare occasions he was home, I tried discussing Amy with him, but James just brushed it off, saying, "I'm busy with work. You're Amy's mom now, so you handle everything." I don't want to know. I had no choice but to keep trying on my own. Over time, Amy started to change. "Tomorrow, I'll need a packed lunch for a field trip," she began asking for my help. The only mom Amy had was me, so I was happy when she relied on me. "Leave it to me. I'll make something super delicious," I replied with a smile. "You're gonna include fried chicken, right?" Amy mumbled. I found this side of Amy endearing. I felt we might eventually develop a real mother-daughter bond. I continued to put in effort to build a better relationship with Amy. Time flew by, and 20 years later, Amy was 25. Now Amy was an adult with her own job. She grew up to be a stunning young woman. Currently, she works in an administrative role at a small company. One evening, out of the blue, she said, "I have something important to discuss." She looked slightly embarrassed. "What is it?" James asked, intrigued. Luckily, he happened to be home that day, so it might be the right time for Amy to share her news. "Well, I'm getting engaged. It's a senior from my company. He proposed to me not long ago," Amy reported joyfully. "Really? Congratulations." I responded immediately, genuinely surprised since I had no idea she even had a boyfriend. "That's great news." James chimed in happily. "Thank you." Amy smiled. Watching James and Amy interact, I felt a surge of happiness. "I'm truly happy for you," I said, tears forming in my eyes. To be frank, Amy was quite a handful. She was often rebellious and took a while to warm up to me. Moreover, with James often away, I had to deal with Amy alone most of the time. Seeing her grow up and prepare to leave the nest was deeply emotional for me. I was deeply moved by the whole situation. As I began to cry, Amy gave me an exasperated look. Then she shot me a cold glare. "Good riddance. Now I can finally cut ties with this old hag." She smirked at me. I choked back the tears that had started. "What do you mean?" Amy responded curtly. "Exactly what I said. Think about it. Someone as plain as you being seen as my mom? Impossible. Did you really think you became my real mom?" I thought Amy was slowly warming up to me, but I was apparently wrong. "No need for a fake. Don't bother coming to the family gathering," she scoffed. I instinctively looked at James for support, but he too had a mocking grin. "Amy's real mom was beautiful. Not like this faded old woman," he remarked. "James, that's harsh." "Defeated," I murmured. Seeing my distressed face, James seemed annoyed. "You were just there to take care of Amy. You're no longer needed." "Thanks for everything," he said, laughing. "Right, we don't need childcare anymore. Thanks for the effort." Amy chuckled. In that moment, I felt something snap inside of me. It turned out Amy never really saw me as her mother. And neither did James. To them, I was just a convenient caretaker for Amy. They were not my family. The two of them joyfully discussed their complaints about me. Quietly, I left the living room where they were seated. Perhaps the family gathering would be better off with Amy's real mom. I whispered to myself. Then I dialed a certain number. A week after Amy's engagement announcement, today was the day for both families to meet. Although I wasn't invited, I secretly arrived at the venue. Why? Because right after announcing her engagement, Amy had demanded something from me. "You're embarrassing, so I don't want you at the family gathering. But you have to cover the cost." My fiancé is paying for most of the wedding, so we're taking care of this dinner's expenses, she said with a smirk. I didn't appreciate her entitled expression. Naturally, I protested. Why should I pay for a dinner I'm not even attending? Let James pay for it. But Amy's mood flipped immediately. You know, Dad doesn't have much money. You have a good job at a major corporation, so just shut up and pay. She yelled at me. I couldn't agree with what was happening, so I didn't respond. Eventually, Amy said, all I want from you is to cover the costs. Just be ready when it's time to pay. She then handed me the reservation details for the family meeting. The address and reservation time were written on it. After that, Amy went straight to her room. Recalling that incident, I was in a room adjacent to where the family introduction was taking place. I had previously asked the venue's staff to book the neighboring room for me. If it was just about the money, I'd think it would be best to show up towards the end of the meal. However, I had another purpose in mind. Luckily, I could faintly hear the voices from the next room. I listened carefully. I'm sorry my mother couldn't make it today. She suddenly fell ill, Amy said, looking a bit down. How phony of her, telling me not to come and then making such a statement. My wife apologizes. I'll handle things today, James added to Amy's fiancé and his parents. Both of them seemed to be in on it, but that didn't matter to me anymore. There's someone better suited for this family introduction, I mumbled to myself. I then signaled to someone I had previously contacted. Thank you for coming, she gave me a thumbs up and headed to the introduction room. James, Amy, long time no see. Amy's real mother, known as Susan, appeared in the doorway. Susan, why are you here? James seemed taken aback. The others were left dumbfounded. I invited her. You don't need a fake when you can have the real deal, I said, smiling from behind Susan. I had easily found Susan's contact through James's social media, and given that I recognized her from Amy's photos. Originally, I researched to allow Amy to contact her real mother, but with the current situation, I ended up contacting Susan. At first, Susan was really surprised when I contacted her on social media. It's understandable. Getting a sudden message from James' current wife would typically cause such a reaction. However, once I explained the situation, she understood and agreed to come to the family gathering. When I relayed this to James, his mood changed dramatically. Why the hell did you do something like that? He glared at me with full force. Susan is undeniably beautiful, but she's quite flashy. Apparently she's 5 years younger than me, but she doesn't seem her age at all. Her hair is colored ash pink, and she's dressed in trendy, youthful clothes from top to bottom. She clearly takes great care in her appearance and looks at least 10 years younger than she is. It's a mystery to me why someone as straightforward as James would marry someone who's his complete opposite. Amidst everyone's shock, only Amy responded. Mom, she murmured, probably recognizing Susan from some old photos. Then Susan quickly turned to Amy and said, What? Can you not call me Mom? I gave birth to you, but I hardly raised you. And I heard you've been talking trash about the woman who did raise you. Don't you think someone who can't even appreciate their own parents isn't fit for marriage? She looked at Amy with a hint of disdain. Amy was clearly shocked to hear such words from the mother she had only dreamed of. Suddenly, James, who had been silent, shouted, Shut up! You'd probably ask if she loved you. It's your fault for not raising Amy properly. Reflect on that. But Susan replied without batting an eyelid, It's your fault for always cheating, right? Weren't you the one who wanted custody of Amy because you needed an heir? Even when I begged to see her, you ignored me. In the end, wasn't it Jessica who took care of her most of the time? You didn't raise her either. She fixed James with a cold stare. What do you mean, Dad? Amy asked, clearly shaken by this new revelation. Taking a deep sigh, Susan said, It doesn't matter. A child who belittles a mother who's raised her for 20 years. I don't need you, but your fiancé will marry you, right? Lucky you found someone who wants you. She chuckled. Amy was clearly taken aback by Susan's words, and her fiancé looked pale as a sheet. His parents, eager to leave, were whispering to him urgently, Why should I need Amy or James? Besides, James, you're cheating right now, aren't you? I dropped the bomb casually. Actually, I had hired a private investigator to look into James's affairs. The results were damning. Turns out he's dating 2 girls at the same time, both from his own company. Showing the findings to James, his face turned an obvious shade of blue. Well, it must be hard juggling 2 relationships at once. Must be tough being so popular, I said with a smirk. James was so shocked he actually got down on his knees. Please don't tell the company. You know what will happen to me. Sweat was dripping from his forehead. From his forehead, by this point, Amy's fiancé and his parents had quickly muttered an excuse and fled the room. Considering his upright demeanor, he probably didn't want anything to do with Amy and all her family drama. Wait, Amy shouted as she rushed out of the room, trying to catch her fiancé. James works at a small IT company. If this gets out, he would surely face a lot of backlash. But I had no intention of letting him off the hook. It's too late. I've already sent evidence of your affair to the company. It'll probably arrive by Monday, don't you think? James stared at me in disbelief. Oh, my drama at the office from Monday? That's going to be entertaining. Susan said, laughing hysterically. James approached me pleadingly. Come on, do something about it. We're a married couple, aren't we? James begged, but it was too little, too late. We're getting divorced. I've gathered all the evidence. Hearing this, James visibly deflated. In the end, Amy's engagement was called off. Her fiancé was adamant about the decision. I misjudged Amy. Not only does she lack gratitude for her upbringing, but she also treats those who cared for her with such disdain. We're done with the engagement. At work, just consider us colleagues, her fiancé supposedly declared with a piercing look. Given the embarrassment at the family gathering, the end of the engagement seemed inevitable. Eventually, Amy resigned from her job. Seeing her ex-fiancé every day at work was taking a toll on her mentally. Now she's reportedly staying home and avoiding going out. She really brought it on herself. Before long, my divorce with James was finalized. James had repeatedly expressed his hope for reconciliation. Can't we give it another shot? I'm just renting my current place, and I hardly have any savings. I've been fired from my job. I can't make ends meet this way, James lamented. As it turned out, James had been let go from his job. Following the evidence I sent, the 2 women he had affairs with were summoned to HR. It was then revealed they were both involved with James. There seemed to have been quite the showdown. Ultimately, the office romance was deemed too scandalous, and he was strongly advised to resign. It was basically a firing. Moreover, James was already 55 years old. He's having a tough time finding another job. But I had no intention of forgiving James for his actions. So with the strong persuasion of my attorney, I managed to get the divorce finalized. James is truly sorry for his actions and is trying to move on. James is truly backed into a corner right now. Though he doesn't have a job lined up, he still needs money to live. He spent so much on his affairs that he hardly has any savings left. Apparently, he's now even behind on rent. If only I hadn't cheated, James sobbed over the phone. But James's cheating is like an addiction. It's unlikely he'll ever change. Perhaps because of James's situation, I've started receiving calls from Amy lately. Because of Dad, the landlord's been on my case about overdue rent. It's the worst. Since you're my mom, come pick me up? Amy casually said such things. With a sigh, I responded, we're divorced, so you're not my responsibility anymore. I'm just an imposter, right? Emphasizing the word imposter, Amy was silent, probably feeling like she'd been hit where it hurts. Seizing the opportunity, I continued. Why don't you rely on your real family, your dad? Or better yet, get a job and take care of yourself. You're an adult after all. I firmly told her, what the hell? I heard Amy fussing on the other end, but I hung up. Goodbye, I murmured and then blocked both Amy and James' numbers. Since then I've made a new friend. Hey there, Jessica. Long time no see. Susan came running towards the meeting spot, waving her hand. Truth be told, after that day, we really hit it off. We had quite the animated chat about James. It was mostly complaints, but we found so much in common to empathize with. Plus, talking with Susan is always fun. All this time, I had been consumed with looking after Amy and working. So I hardly had any time for myself. But now I can enjoy my own time however I please. Thinking about that makes me quite excited. Jessica, you've been smiling a lot more lately. A smiling face suits you better. It makes me happy too. Susan said with a bright smile. Her words warmed my heart. Some say turning 50 is the halfway point in life, but I don't feel that way at all. To me, this is just the starting point. I'm determined to live a life without regrets from here on out. Dylan, how could you? You kicked out your wife and kid to do this with me in broad daylight. I don't see Emily as a woman. She's just the maid. But I'm kind, so I sometimes give the maid a day off. Dylan gifted me a trip to a spa in Palm Springs. Right after he saw me and Ariel off with a smile, he was intertwined in a compromising position with his mistress. And in our very own bedroom, no less. A voice came from the front door. "Mom, are you still here?" Panicking, Dylan and his companion scrambled from one end of the room to the other before darting out onto the balcony. Ariel's expression when she arrived was chillingly knowing. "Making such a racket. Did you see a nasty bug or something?" "A bug or something like it." "Ew, that's gross." "Exactly. Gotta deal with it properly." Keeping my composure, I locked the balcony door with a loud click. Beyond the lace curtains, a silhouette cowered. "Mom, I really hate bugs. No mercy for bugs, right?" Nodding deeply, I dialed a number. "My name is Emily Johnson, 47 years old. I got married 12 years ago. I met my husband Dylan at the office. He was hired mid-career, and I was assigned as his mentor. We quickly became friends. Not only was Dylan diligent in his work, but he also had a warm personality. He could easily get along with anyone, making him a favorite in the office in no time. The female employees loved him, and the male employees trusted him. "Hey Dylan, seriously, you don't have a girlfriend? Then let's go out for drinks." A younger female colleague teased him, trying to hide my jealousy. I realized I had already fallen for the popular Dylan. But I couldn't even casually ask him out for lunch. I thought I'd keep these feelings a secret. However, out of the blue, Dylan approached me. "You know, I've fallen for you, Emily. Your modesty and the careful attention you give to things. It's wonderful." Next thing I knew, we were headed towards marriage. After our wedding, I decided to retire from my job. I wanted to continue working, but Dylan strongly wished for me to be a stay-at-home wife. Given our age, he also wanted kids soon. That's why, soon after I left work, I was shocked by his words. "Just living off my money and lazing around, huh? You're worthless." I soon discovered that Dylan was only kind on the outside, especially about my being a homemaker. I told him I wanted to return to work, but he wouldn't allow it. "Think you can handle both housework and a job? Don't embarrass me by showing everyone how useless you are. Just stay home and know your place." I couldn't believe this was the same Dylan I had known. Many of our colleagues lived in our apartment building, which wasn't company housing, but was conveniently located near our workplace. Whenever Dylan met a colleague in the apartment building, he would greet them with a friendly smile. Sometimes he'd even casually put his arm around my shoulder. I'd stiffen up in surprise, but people thought we were just a sweet couple. I once vaguely discussed my husband's behavior with an old colleague. "Dylan is kind of rude at home, a complete opposite of how he is outside." That's kind of cute in a weird way. I still find it hard to accept reality. There's no way my former colleague, who only knows Dylan's facade, would doubt him. But, I just can't picture Dylan acting all high and mighty. Maybe Emily is just overthinking it? Moreover, Dylan is trusted more by society than I am. They just brushed it off as me being overly sensitive. My parents reacted the same way. Emily has always been the worrying type. Maybe kind-hearted Dylan is just tired from being considerate to everyone outside. "Emily, you have to support him." It felt like they were implying that I was in the wrong. The more I spoke ill of Dylan, the more I feared I would become the villain. Even though I felt uncomfortable at home, I became pregnant and gave birth. The birth of our daughter, Ariel, brought a significant change to our relationship. Dylan absolutely adores Ariel. Thankfully, he stopped nagging me in front of her. When Ariel is asleep, he still asks, "Did you nap again today?" You sure have a lot of free time, but it's less frequent. Ever since Ariel was a baby, Dylan would eagerly take her out and show her off to the entire neighborhood. The neighbors always praise him as a good dad. What? Me a good dad? No, I'm just average. Playing with my daughter makes all the work stress go away. Besides, I have to give my wife some alone time too. Nah, I'm no super dad, that's for sure. Dylan, always playing with Ariel in the park in front of our apartment complex, not only earned the title of a good husband, but also of a wonderful father. But the truth is, he goes out drinking every night and comes home late. At home, he's always on his phone and ignores Ariel. To top it off, sometimes he stays out overnight saying I'm exhausted from work and parenting. I need a break. He sure knows how to put on a show. What a sneaky man. Moreover, he frequently buys things to get Ariel's attention. Daddy's nice, right? Can you say thank you to Daddy? Thank you, Daddy. Do you love Daddy? I love you so much. I understand that he wants to see Ariel smile, but he's just using material things to get her attention. Once he's satisfied with that, he won't pay attention to Ariel anymore. When Ariel was younger, she genuinely enjoyed his gifts, but gradually she became confused by Dylan's fluctuating attitude, sometimes being very kind and other times being distant. Now that she's in 4th grade, she shows happiness when she gets something. But she doesn't initiate any interaction with Dylan. One day, I received a call from one of Ariel's friends' moms. She is Kate, a former colleague of mine. Although we didn't interact much at work, our kids happened to be in the same grade and we live in the same apartment complex, so we became close. When I answered the call, Kate's shouting pierced my ears. "Your daughter stole my daughter's video game," she exclaimed. Apparently, Ariel had gone over to Kate's house after school and had supposedly stolen a video game. "What kind of parenting are you doing?" "She's twisted," Kate continued. I trembled at her one-sided tirade. I promised to come over to her house after talking to Ariel, and somehow ended the call. "I didn't steal anything," Ariel pleaded, tears in her eyes. "I know. Mom believes in you," I reassured her. After hearing Ariel's side of the story, I began to think that maybe Kate had just misunderstood. Just then, Dylan came home, out of breath. "That thief!" Dylan exclaimed, punching the wall with all his might. His fist sank into it. I hurriedly embraced a frozen Ariel. "Stop it, Dylan, just listen," I pleaded. "It's your fault for raising Ariel to be like a thief." I suspected that Kate, who currently works with Dylan, must have contacted him too. Dylan forcefully pushed me away and grabbed Ariel's arm, dragging her to Kate's house. "I'm so sorry," Dylan's voice echoed in the apartment hallway. Rushing over, I saw that Ariel was being forced to kneel on the ground and apologize. Kate's husband rushed to help Ariel up, and he also began to apologize. "I'm sorry," Kate said in a monotone voice. "It seems like there was a misunderstanding. Turns out Ariel wasn't a thief after all. Our kid accidentally broke a video game out of carelessness, and not wanting to get in trouble with the parents, lied about it being stolen," Kate explained, scratching her chin in embarrassment. Her husband kept apologizing. Dylan laughed gently. "Everyone makes mistakes. Don't worry about it," he said. As I was about to speak, Dylan twisted my finger from behind. Though he only showed his parental side when it was convenient, I believed that Dylan loved Ariel. But now, I realized he cared more about his reputation than his beloved daughter. When we got home, Dylan gave a faint smile and apologized to both me and Ariel. "Sorry about that. I got really rattled. Kate called and she was super mad," he explained. "Wait, Kate, we work in the same department now, and she's been good to me. So, having our kids squabble affect our work is just not cool," I added. "Right, you have to understand where I'm coming from." In the end, it was all about him. My anger surged, causing pain in my back where I had been hurt earlier. My face twisted in pain, but I reassured myself that it was okay. With that, Ariel retreated to her room. Ariel is so mature, I thought to myself. Way more than you, Emily. You always seem upset. Feeling vindicated by Ariel's forgiveness, Dylan casually started drinking a beer. The next night, he came home early, seeming genuinely remorseful. "You're not mad anymore?" he asked. "Look, I got you something." He showed me his smartphone, and I saw a reservation screen for a hot spring inn. As an apology, he explained. I booked it for this weekend, just for the two of us. The inn was located about an hour from home in a spa town. Even though it was close by, it was a luxury we had never experienced on a family trip. Amazingly, there's even an open-air bath in the room. Ariel and I exchanged glances and smiled. How many years has it been since our last vacation? I wondered. Family-friendly hotels and amusement parks were never Dylan's cup of tea. Traveling with kids is so boring. Why do I have to entertain them all the time? Due to the constant unpleasant atmosphere during supposed to be fun trips, the idea of vacationing vanished from our household after a while. Now that Ariel has grown up, she should enjoy relaxing at spa resorts, I thought. Then, on the day of the trip, Dylan waved us off from the doorway with a big smile. "Don't worry about me, just go have fun with your girl time," he said. Ariel and I happily headed towards the train station. As we were thinking of grabbing a coffee at the station, I suddenly realized, oh no, I left my wallet. "Oh, Mom, sorry, Ariel said. "At least I noticed before we left," I replied. True. Holding our slightly heavy bags, we hurried back the way we came. Ariel sat down on a bench in front of our apartment saying, "I'm exhausted." I took the elevator up to our apartment alone. As I tried to take off my shoes at the entrance, something felt off. Whose shoes are these? I wondered. There were a pair of women's shoes haphazardly kicked off. Holding my breath, I could hear Dylan's voice from the bedroom. "I gifted her a spa trip and she easily got in a good mood," he said. Such a simple woman. Then a woman's laughter echoed. "Dylan, you're so bad," she said. "Sending off your wife and daughter just so you can have fun with me in broad daylight?" I immediately recognized the voice as Kate's. Even though it wasn't hot, I felt an uncomfortable sweat. "I don't even see Emily as a woman," Dylan continued. "She's just a housemaid. But being the kind guy I am, I sometimes give my maid a day off. Kind, who says, it's so unfair that I gave up the spa resort I was supposed to go to with you. You know what, Kate? Because of you, Emily was super mad at me. I felt guilty about staying out overnight and didn't want to pay the cancellation fee for the resort. So using the trip to appease my maid seemed like a smart move. Not only am I kind, but I'm also clever." I quietly approached the bedroom. Peeking through the slightly open door, I saw Dylan and Kate intertwined in an indecent manner. My vision began to blur. Was it sadness? Anger? I couldn't quite understand the emotions bubbling within me. Just staring at the entangled figures, I muttered under my breath, "Disgusting." Hearing my voice, the playful actions of Dylan and Kate came to a halt. In that sudden silence, the sound of the front door opening rang out. "Mom, what's taken so long?" Dylan and Kate panicked, looking around for an escape. But with my shadow at the door, they had nowhere to go. Ariel's footsteps got closer. Both of them rushed from one end of the room to the other, and finally bolted to the balcony. Despite the lack of an outdoor hot tub, they stood exposed in all their glory. Ariel, who had just entered, looked stern. "What's all the fuss? Did you see a nasty bug or something?" "Something like a bug, yeah? That's gross, right? We need to deal with it properly." There I was, oddly calm, avoiding the discarded clothes on the floor. I advanced into the room and locked the balcony door with a loud click. Two silhouettes crouched behind the lace curtains. "Mom, I really hate bugs." Ariel stared at me intensely. I had thought I was alone. But there was Ariel, right beside me, showing unwavering trust. We shouldn't show any mercy to bugs, should we? As I nodded deeply, I made a phone call. After a while, I unlocked the balcony door. A cool and refreshing breeze flowed in from the wide-open window. It's a pleasant season, perfect for going out. It's so cold. A naked couple tumbled into the room, blue from the cold. With her cheeks burning from cold and embarrassment, Kate dove straight into the bed. Pushing Kate aside, Dylan also wrapped himself in the blanket. "Emily, do you even realize what you've done?" Dylan's eyes were filled with rage as he bellowed with a deep, angry voice. "And what about you, Dylan? Why aren't you dressed?" Startled, Dylan pulled the blanket up to cover his mouth. It seemed like his anger from being locked out on the balcony had burst out. But I really wanted to know what he and Kate were doing in this room to begin with. "What were you two doing?" When I asked again, Dylan clicked his tongue in annoyance. "Geez, lay off. You saw, right? We were just play wrestling," Dylan joked, making Kate burst out laughing. Yeah. We're wrestling buddies, you know?" "Oh, did you, Emily, imagine something else?" "Oh my, for someone so plain, you have a wild imagination, huh?" How embarrassing. Despite being caught in a situation they couldn't deny, they seemed quite amused. To them, I was nothing more than a lowly presence. I knew this would happen, that's why Ariel wasn't here. To them, I'm just a nobody, nothing to fear. "Don't play games. You were cheating, weren't you?" I uttered in a low voice. Both of their laughter came to an abrupt halt. With a dismissive tone, Dylan said, "So what?" I was at a loss for words. Just as I tried to speak up, Dylan beat me to it. "Yeah, I cheated. So what? Is that wrong? It's not my fault you, Emily, lack any charm as a woman. Don't act all high and mighty. I've never once had romantic feelings for you. You're just like a housekeeper I hired." I already knew the love was gone, but having it said outright hurt deeply. Seeing I wasn't replying, Dylan confidently continued, "Thanks to me working and bringing in the money, you and Ariel can live. Your futures depend on me. You know what happens when you go against me, right?" I kept my head down, not responding. Slowly, I lifted my head to see Dylan with a gentle smile, the kind he shows to others. "It's all right. I'm kind and I won't abandon you, Emily or Ariel. You're a perfect, modest housewife, and I'll keep you by my side." The thought of continuing to live with Dylan sent chills down my spine. "That's enough." Before I could say more, a voice from behind rose loudly. The room's door flew open and my mother stormed in with determination. "Oh, Emily's mom?" Both Dylan and Kate clutched their blankets. Following my mother, my father also walked in. "Oh, and Emily's dad too? What's going on?" Dylan, clearly panicked, was told by me. I called them. "What, why? This is an ambush." "That's low," Dylan murmured, cowering into the blanket. Wanting a face-to-face conversation, I handed them bath towels. Finally, after coming out from under the blankets, we sat them down in front of my parents and me. Dylan's face was pale, and Kate was fixing her towel's hem with a displeased look. "Dylan, I always thought you were a wonderful husband. To think you've been belittling Emily at home." My mother said, sobbing, "I misjudged you, Dylan. You're like a person with two faces." My father added, giving him a sharp look, "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to cheat. But Emily was so into Ariel and she never paid attention to me, so I felt lonely." So on a whim, Dylan, still clinging to his good guy facade, makes excuses one after the other. My father glares daggers at Dylan. "It's Emily's fault for not paying attention to you, you say?" "Ah, no, that's not what I meant." Dylan, avoiding eye contact, suddenly pointed a finger at Kate. "But she kept coming on to me, she was so persistent, and I just couldn't say no, so..." Willing to throw even his beloved girlfriend under the bus just to protect himself. Clearly the one he loves most is himself. "Excuse me, you're the one who came on to me," an infuriated Kate said, while Dylan whispered to her, "Just go along with the story for now." But it seems Kate values herself the most, just like Dylan. The truth is, Dylan was the one who approached me. He kept insisting that he's been in love with me for the past 2 years. I have a family, so I refused, but he just wouldn't take no for an answer. "Want to see the text proof? I'm the victim here who was dragged into this affair against my will." Dylan, with a face contorted in despair, looked up to see Kate looking down at him smugly. The mother clapped her hands loudly. "You say you're the victim? Emily is the real victim here. You're the one at fault," Kate shrugged her shoulders. Under the intimidating presence of the parents, Dylan became more defiant, his displeasure evident. "So unfair, Emily. You called your parents here to lecture me? Ganging up on me with allies on your side, that's so low of you. You're such a cowardly woman who can't do anything on her own." His anger directed at me even before any sign of remorse. How much does he look down on me? It's not unfair. I didn't just call my parents. I flung the room door open. There stood Dylan's parents, looking quite uncomfortable. "Mom!" Dylan recoiled as if he'd been shot. He had never shown his true self, even to his own parents. They adored him as their perfect, accomplished son. I didn't expect them to be on my side, but I called them to show them the truth. Even if I told them, nobody would believe that Dylan uses terrible language at home. So I wanted them to see it with their own eyes. Having played the part of the perfect son for so long, the harsh looks from his parents seemed to hurt Dylan the most. He held back his tears, standing wrapped in just a towel and looking utterly pitiful. "I feel bad for Dylan," his mother whispered. "It's not right to gang up on him like this. Maybe he was a bit too hard on Emily sometimes, but working outside, of course he's stressed, so it can't be helped. Let him vent a little at home." Dylan looked up, his face wet with tears. His mother ran to his side, holding his hand tightly. The affair was just a momentary lapse. No, I can see how it's Emily's fault too. Inviting us to witness the affair was a nasty move. Poor thing, he must have gotten sick of his home life. His father nodded in agreement. That's right. What's with this treatment over a simple affair? Yes, people have always said that affairs are a mark of a man's prowess. What's the big deal? Do you find it fun to crush a man's pride like this? Yes, every man has an affair or two. Heck, I've always had a woman or two on the side. Yes, wait, what? His wife, who had been nodding along, suddenly looked alarmed. You've been cheating too? The scene quickly shifted to the parents-in-law having a heated argument. While she defended Dylan earlier, the moment she found out she was being cheated on, she lost her cool. I wished they would just leave, as they weren't helping, but instead were making things worse. His father looked at me with pleading eyes, but I wasn't about to help him. Dylan, now with no one on his side and exposed for who he truly is, was lost. Kate, who had kept quiet, seized the opportunity to escape from my house. But at her home were her husband, child, and Ariel. Of course, I had informed her husband about the affair. I had left Ariel with him to shield the child from witnessing any shocking scenes. Yet Kate, dressed only in a towel, rushed into their home, causing even more chaos. Mama, you are disgusting, Emily's child, who should have known nothing, sensed the atmosphere and strongly rejected. Dylan and Kate both lost their family's trust because of their selfish affair. That day, Ariel and I took refuge at our parents' house. I thought we were headed for a divorce, but a few days later Dylan came begging for forgiveness. I'm so sorry. For what exactly are you sorry? For the affair I had. I really messed up. When I thought I might lose you, Emily, I suddenly realized how important you are to me. I turned to face my parents. The three of us exchanged smiles. It's hard to tell if you're lying or not. You've always been all talk, just a smooth talker. Dylan bit his lip and pleaded. I'm not lying, he said. But it sure sounds like a lie to me. Please believe me. Dylan, with a serious look, even went as far as kneeling. Why is he so desperate to reconcile? I thought to myself, it's clearly for his own benefit. I couldn't help but feel skeptical. If I divorce you, it'll admit the rumors are true, huh? Dylan went pale. It turns out, Dylan and Kate's shameful acts had been exposed to the public. Our balcony has gaps in the railing, making everything visible from outside. Instead of laying low, it seems Dylan and Kate had a loud argument on the balcony. Thanks to that spectacle, there were many witnesses. Some of them even worked at the same company. What? I exclaimed. You're saying Kate and I were causing a scene on the balcony without our clothes? That can't be right. It must have been a misunderstanding. Not to brag, but we're a happy couple. Dylan had always brushed off any rumors at work. Still head over heels in love. That's how he's been portraying our relationship. But now it's clear that it was all a facade. He's desperate to avoid a divorce, only thinking about himself. You get caught in an embarrassing situation and you still play the good guy? I couldn't help but feel angry. Don't you think everyone has caught on to your happy couple act by now? I couldn't stand his lies anymore. Well, in fact, I've been getting tons of messages from former colleagues. On the surface, they seem concerned about me, but what they really want to know is if the rumors are true. I couldn't believe how many people were talking about us. I've been replying humbly. I'm sorry, I can't really say. This answer seems to satisfy everyone. But it's not enough for me. Emily, I'm begging you. I've learned my lesson from this. I'm never gonna cheat again. I promise. Please give me another chance. Dylan's words fell on deaf ears. No way, I said firmly. Dylan's voice was desperate. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I won't cheat again. Please forgive me. He repeatedly bowed deeply, his forehead touching the floor, but I couldn't forgive him. You think just apologizing for the affair will make everything right? I couldn't believe his audacity. Your sins aren't limited to the affair. You've made a mockery of me for years. Why would I come back to someone like that? I couldn't hold back my anger any longer. I'm sorry. I won't say cruel things anymore. But I knew it was just another lie. That's probably a lie too, isn't it? I couldn't trust anything he said anymore. Dylan's every move seemed like a mere performance. It's only natural not to trust a liar. Eventually, I managed to finalize the divorce from Dylan. He was reluctant to pay alimony and child support for Ariel, but when I told him I'd ask his employer to deduct it from his paycheck, he paid up right away. But Dylan is still pretending to be happily married, bringing fake homemade lunches to work that are just store-bought meals repackaged. His shirts are wrinkled, and his suits reportedly have a slight odor. It's so pitiful that no one really confronts him about his lies and deceit. He really confronted him about it. He probably would have been better off going back to his parents' house, but it turns out his parents were also in a big dispute and got divorced. My father-in-law was furious, saying, "It's all because of Dylan that she got divorced." My mother-in-law has cut ties with Dylan, exclaiming, "Such a deceitful duo. It makes my skin crawl." Kate apologized to her husband and expressed her wish to move out. However, he simply told her, "Just leave on your own," essentially asking for a divorce. Of course, the children aren't going with her. Word is, she even quit her job at her age. Unable to bear the whispers and rumors, she vanished without even handing in a resignation letter. Even her family doesn't know where she is now. On the other hand, I'm still staying with my parents. I was on edge, thinking I needed to find a job and a place to live ASAP to be independent. However, my mom comforted me, saying, "You don't need to hesitate, even with your parents. You can stay here forever if you want to." I'm sorry we didn't believe what you said from the beginning, Emily. My parents apologized deeply. It was wrong of us to only believe in Dylan's facade and not listen to your words, Emily. Regardless of how unbelievable it sounds, parents should always believe and listen to their child. Everyone makes mistakes. If only I had been stronger, maybe I could have stood up to Dylan and built a peaceful family. Mom has always been on my side, hasn't she? Ariel, who was by my side, snuggled up to me. I know I can't be perfect, but I want to be a mother who can protect Ariel's precious smile. Are you hungry, Ariel and Emily? What do you want to have for dinner? Meatloaf. Both Ariel and I answered in unison to my mother's question. A lively and fun new life begins. Lighten up, don't get mad. I was so dumbfounded, I couldn't say a word. I rushed to my mother and cried out to her. My mother then hugged my shoulder and quietly said, "Let's head home." At my mother's words, I weakly replied, "My name is Mary Johnson. I work as an office employee, and I have a boyfriend whom I'm going to marry soon. His name is Jake Williams. Jake has a kind nature, handsome looks, a stable job with a good income. Truly, he's a catch in every way. However, why someone as perfect as Jake would date someone as ordinary as me remains a mystery. So once out of curiosity, I asked him, 'Why are you with me?' He replied with a smile, 'Well, because I wanted to be with you.' His answer was pretty much textbook, which was somehow both reassuring and yet a bit unsettling. But all in all, after asking, I felt more at peace than before. But for some reason, I had a nagging feeling inside. I chose to ignore that emotion. I love Jake that much. And the reason I love Jake so much is because I despise my biological father. My father is the complete opposite of Jake, very cold-hearted. He never showed up for school events, and we've never spent Christmas together. He always prioritized his work over me, despite being his daughter. It's because he managed several companies. Thanks to my father working like a devil, my mother could be a stay-at-home mother, and we never had financial difficulties. However, I hardly remember receiving much affection from him growing up. That's why I came to see my father, who prioritized his job over his daughter, as a demon who had sold off any trace of kindness somewhere. No matter how busy he might be, as long as we're a family, I believe that it's one of his duties to spend time with us. Maybe that's why I grew to be uncomfortable around him. I'm sure my father and I have completely opposing values. But Jake, whom I deeply love, surely wouldn't do to a family what my father did. I was confident in his character, and I truly believed in him. That's why I confidently went ahead with the engagement party. But in the end, my father couldn't make it. The reason he couldn't come was, once again, because he was too busy with work. At this point, I could predict his excuses for not showing up without even asking. Just recalling that time makes me feel so bad, I can't help but sigh deeply. Hearing my loud sigh, Jake looked at me with concern. "What's wrong? You seem down. See?" Unlike my father, Jake immediately notices and cares about how I'm feeling. I knew I was right about him. I was just wondering why my dad can't be more like you, always attentive to me. Well, we'd have to ask your father about that. I'm sorry for discussing this right now. It's okay. On a happier note, we finally got married. Yes, I'm so happy. That's right. Today Jake and I officially tied the knot. I feel silly to think of my father on such a happy day. Alright, how about some barbecue to celebrate our marriage? Sounds good. And so Jake and I headed to a barbecue joint. Oh, what would you like to drink? Well, I'll go with a soft drink. Alright, that was a lie. In reality, I wanted an alcoholic beverage, not a soft drink. But, reading between the lines, I chose to go with what Jake was having. Jake never drinks alcohol when he's with me. It's the one thing about him that I just can't get along with. Why can't I accept this about Jake? Well, there's a certain loneliness when you're the only one drinking alcohol in a group. It's a sentiment most drinkers might understand. Besides, I felt embarrassed being tipsy in front of someone who's completely sober. So when I'm on a date with Jake, I have to resist the urge to drink, and I hate that. Once I asked Jake about it. Hey Jake, do you not drink? After a brief pause he replied, Yeah, I'm just not really into alcohol. I see. I thought I detected a grim expression on his face at that moment. Or was that just my imagination? However, to avoid being labeled as annoying or risking Jake distancing himself from me, I never broached the topic of alcohol again. Sometimes I wished Jake and I could enjoy drinks together. Deep down I felt a bit of resentment. But then I reminded myself, isn't it enough just to have Jake by my side and pretend those feelings don't exist? This is delicious, I said, seeing Jake enjoy his meal with a smile. I chastised myself for dwelling on such trivial matters. Looking back, it was clear to me that I was forcing myself to compromise, fearing the loss of Jake. Now, when I think about it, that part of me that gets too immersed in a relationship might not be so healthy. But knowing me, I probably won't change. Moreover, I don't even remember the taste of the barbecue we had that day. It's been so long since then. By that time, Jake and I had already started living together. I had imagined a sweet honeymoon phase awaiting me, but Jake was no prince. Surprisingly, ever since we began living together, Jake started behaving selfishly, contrary to his previous kind attitude. To be specific, before we moved in together, he would almost always take me to places I wanted to go on our dates. But after moving in, Jake only wanted to go where he desired, making it a stark contrast from before. Maybe after our families met and we got officially registered, Jake felt he had secured me. That's probably why his selfish behaviors increased. But I thought maybe Jake had been compromising for my sake all this time. So I pretended to enjoy our dates despite feeling the opposite. Perhaps because I kept overlooking such things, Jake began leaving his clothes on the floor at home, not bothering put them in the laundry. When I reflect on those times, I realize I couldn't confront Jake because I loved him so much. From my past experiences, I believed that if I angered a man, he would drift away, so I never expressed my displeasure. Also, we were planning our wedding soon, and I didn't want any fights. But sometimes I regret not confronting Jake before our wedding, thinking I could have understood his true nature. Thinking about it now doesn't change the past. In the end, I turned a blind eye to Jake's selfishness as our wedding day approached. On the day of our wedding, friends from both sides gathered at the venue, celebrating our marriage joyously. Of course, Jake's parents were present, and so was my mother. But as expected, my father didn't show. Instead of sighing about the usual reality, I decided to devote the role of a cheerful bride. Voices of friends showering me with congratulations like Mary. Congrats, and you look beautiful. Today is a day where Jake and I are the stars, so let's make the most of it. With that thought, I took a big gulp from my glass of white wine. The guys cheered, saying, "Look at the bride go!" Cheers! They seemed to be getting tipsy too. I can handle my liquor pretty well, but I wondered if they could. As I was concerned about the others, a man approached Jake. He seemed to be a friend from Jake's hometown, a few years older than him, and he had an intimidating look. "Jake, come on, have a drink." "You're being outdrunk by the bride," the friend pressed Jake assertively. But Jake was taken aback by the friend's unreasonable demand, but he glared at Jake menacingly. "Hey, what's the matter? If you won't drink, I'll spill the beans on some of your old misdeeds to your bride. You wouldn't want that, would you? Alright, I got it. I was shocked by the friend's inexplicable threat, but it seemed Jake had done something in the past and didn't want it exposed, so he drank. Yes, that's the spirit. But what happened next was a nightmare. Suddenly, Jake started laughing, stood up and shockingly smashed the wedding cake right into my face. My vision was immediately obstructed. Hey Jake, I was panicking, but nearby I could hear his friends laughing, saying, "Man, that's hilarious. It's unbelievable to think they found joy in throwing cake in someone's face." I wondered if this sense of humor was typical of roughnecks. Could it be that Jake was friends with such a senior? Maybe Jake used to be a troublemaker too? Jake, what are you thinking? This is too much. But, perhaps because he was drunk, Jake responded with, "We're all having fun. Don't get mad." I was just speechless. I rushed over to my mother, tears streaming down my face. My mother held me and softly said, "Let's go home." I nodded weakly. Yeah, I was utterly drained. And so was my mother. At that moment, Jake's parents approached us, their faces turning pale. "We're so sorry, our Jake has. We are truly sorry. We never knew he had such a bad side when he drinks." It seemed Jake's parents were also at a loss about the situation. "It's all right. It's Jake's fault and not yours anyway," my mother said with a kind voice, but her furrowed brow told another story. I'd always seen my mother as a gentle person, so seeing her like this was new to me. As my mother and I were about to leave the venue, someone suddenly swung open the door with great force. Unbelievably, that man was my father. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he still had that cool, reserved air about him. However, he quickly noticed something was amiss at the venue. "What's going on here? It seems things got rowdy while I was away." "What happened, Mom?" "Well, Jake, Mary's husband, started acting strange after having a drink and threw cake all over Mary's face. He always seemed so calm and polite before. I don't know what to do now." "I see. So the well-mannered groom turned bizarre after some booze. That explains the whipped cream all over Mary's face." "Yes, that's what happened." My father acted quickly after understanding the situation. "Hey Dad, what are you?" To my shock, my father dashed towards a drunken Jake. All eyes in the room immediately shifted to him. He was dressed in an expensive-looking suit with neatly styled hair. Though he was an older man, he was lean and moved with grace. "Who's that guy? Isn't he just a regular guest?" "Yeah, but I feel like I've seen him somewhere before." Many in the venue mistakenly thought he was Jake's father. As my father approached Jake, he demanded, "What's the meaning of this?" Then, while still drunk, Jake said something like this to my father. "Who the hell are you? Introduce yourself before questioning others, old man." The room buzzed with chatter again. "Wait, isn't that guy Jake's dad? Seriously, then who is he?" "I don't know, but he sure seems stern." "Really, after drinking, Jake picks a fight with such a guy? Is he okay?" Without letting the murmurs distract him, my father declared, "My name is Johnson. The bride's father." The moment he introduced himself, Jake's face went pale and the room erupted into even more chaos. "What? The bride's dad? That's super harsh." What was Jake thinking? With the bride having left and all, looks like her dad's. Like her dad's pretty mad, right? Yeah, seriously, this is one heck of a scene. Despite the commotion, Jake's inebriation showed no signs of wearing off, and he brazenly said to my father, "You're Mary's dad." "Huh? Oh, sorry. It's hard to remember faces from the engagement party who didn't attend. So my bad. Jake had just picked a fight with my father." But my father, unshaken, retorted, "I leave the household matters to my wife. By the way, I'm a businessman and run these 3 companies." My father handed Jake 3 business cards. Jake's eyes went wide as he read them. "What? Cows Corporation, Sweet Corporation, and Electric Incorporated. Wait, you run all these companies?" Jake's dumbfounded voice echoed throughout the hall. And the crowd in the venue started buzzing again. "Did you hear that? All those are publicly traded companies. Man, that older guy knows his stuff. You can't always judge a book by its cover." And here Jake was, being rude to such influential man. How embarrassing. Hearing the crowd's reactions, Jake realized the gravity of his mistake, looking visibly embarrassed. It seemed the commotion sobered him up. Just as Jake was about to say sorry to my father, an unexpected figure approached. It was none other than Jake's friend from his hometown. "Hey Jake, with the way things are going, this wedding's not continuing," the friend smirked maliciously. "Dude," Jake's expression darkened. "Why bother holding back any longer? After just a bit of booze, you went off the rails. In the end, you can't escape who you truly are." The friend's expression grew more and more sinister. While it was clear that the friend and Jake were having a conversation, my father seemed to not quite grasp the main point of their discussion. So my father posed several questions to the two. "Hey, what have you guys been talking about? And who exactly are you to Jake?" "Oh, sorry about that. I'm an old acquaintance of Jake's from our hometown. Well, more like his big bro, you know? Looks like you're curious about me too, Mr. Johnson. Should Jake tell you, or should I spill the beans?" "Anything but that. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. The truth is I used to be quite the troublemaker. But then when it came time to fit into society, I pretended to be this good guy. My true nature isn't that of a good guy, but more like a rebel. It's getting hard for me to suppress this urge. And this guy, he cheated, called it a little fling before getting married. People can't escape their true nature, right, Jake?" When the friend mentioned that Jake had been cheating, the crowd once again began to murmur and buzz. "What? Jake cheated for real? No way. The good guy Jake? Well, it's often the unexpected ones. Jake might have actually cheated." "Exactly. I remember hearing he was a wild one in his student days." This adds up. As whispers grew louder and the crowd became more suspicious, my father questioned Jake. "Is it true that you cheated?" My father's voice was calm and serene, yet unmistakably that of my father. There was no doubt in my mind that he was truly my father, and I felt the weight of the situation deeply. But the very next moment, Jake, as if he had turned into a completely different person, blurted out like this. "Yeah, it's true. Being with a woman like that, it's exhausting. What's the big deal if I took a little break and cheated?" Jake's face twisted into a devilish grin, his gaze piercing through my father. Jake seemed like a completely different person. Even my father seemed overwhelmed by the drastic change in Jake and the evil aura surrounding him. "Jake, are you joking?" Needless to say, witnessing this unfamiliar side of Jake and feeling the palpable tension, my heart felt like it was about to shatter. Yet, in my heart, I still had love for Jake, which somehow kept me holding on. There was no way this could be true. I hoped and prayed it was a lie. I rushed to Jake's side, who had completely changed. My dress got tangled around my legs, slowing me down, but my resolve never wavered. "Jake? Are you just feeling off today and that's why you're saying such things? Please tell me that's the case." But my heartfelt pleas seemed to shatter into a million pieces. "What? Just because you're the star today doesn't mean you get to play the tragic heroine. It was clear to me that you never really saw the real me. That's why I couldn't show my true self. But I did love you, that's undeniable. But sometimes to keep happiness, one needs a break. If you want to walk this life with me, you can't freak out over a little fling here and there." But I bet you'd say that's asking too much. Jake's words, filled with his selfish and egocentric sentiments, pierced through my heart, and the signs of my emotional instability started to show. Had Jake not said such cruel things, tears wouldn't have streamed down my face. Achilles, the invincible warrior from Greek mythology, would never be hurt if he was attacked anywhere except his ankles. But speaking of me, I couldn't stand Jake's single blow at all. I crouched down on the floor. The feeling was like being thrown into the abyss. But there was a knight who came to my rescue. It was my father. "You think it's your prerogative to cheat? You're not a man, you're a demon. Don't you dare touch my daughter ever again with that devilish humanity. This is an order from Mary's father. Got it?" With a voice filled with fierce determination, my father vehemently rebuked Jake. His strong spirit was undoubtedly to protect his daughter, me. He must have been fighting as a knight in the business world for a long time. Otherwise, his words wouldn't carry such a weight. Jake was clearly shaken by my father's powerful words. But if he backed down now, it would be admitting his defeat. So perhaps it was the pride within Jake that wouldn't allow him to back down just like that. So with a last defiant roar, Jake retorted, "Who are you to act like a concerned parent now? You didn't even show up for the engagement party because of work. Honestly, it's hard not to laugh hearing you talk. It's clear you weren't there for Mary. Indeed, my father had always been such a strong presence in my family's dynamics. Objectively and physically, when my father wasn't around, my mother was always there, constantly watching over me. However, I felt that despite being engrossed in his work, my father always kept me in a special corner of his mind. If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have gone to such lengths to raise and support me. Looking at my father's strong posture, I could feel the immense love he held for me. To me, my father was no longer the bad guy. He was an invaluable presence, an unwavering ally. I was content enough because finally I could feel my father's love like this. Yet my father continued to act like a knight, defending me. How can you say such a thing to someone? I asked, hugging him from behind. My father was taken aback by my sudden gesture, frozen in surprise. Not caring about it, I whispered, "It's okay, Dad. We shouldn't waste our time on someone like him. Go back to work. I'm sorry for causing you trouble, Mary." It felt like a touching moment between a father and daughter was about to unfold, but it was shattered by Jake's loud voice. "What do you mean by someone like him?" he asked, clearly not understanding. So I spelled it out for him. "Let me clarify for you since you seem clueless. I don't like guys who think it's okay to throw cake in people's faces. Don't push your messed up values onto me. I want a divorce from you." My assertiveness seemed to rival even my father's, leaving Jake speechless. Apparently, the thought of divorcing me was quite a shock, even for him. "Mary, are you sure about this?" my father asked, his voice unusually gentle. "I'm fine, really. More importantly, Dad, you can go back to work. Sorry for making you deal with the mess. You're wise and strong, the best knight. You shouldn't be involved in such trivial matters." My workaholic father wasn't disinterested in me. He was working hard for my sake. Just realizing that made me so happy. "You fool. You think I could ever abandon you? Do you know how much loneliness I've made you bear all these years?" Saying that, my father pulled me into a tight embrace. It goes without saying that I shed tears. Afterwards, I divorced Jake. Jake said things like, "I guess marriage wasn't for me. But I was happy to have loved you, Mary, trying to save face even at the end." I figured he probably wanted to make me just some convenient woman. That's why he could say such things after everything that had happened. So I told him off. "I don't know you anymore. Never show your face to me again." When I said that, Jake looked sad, but I couldn't care less. After the incidents at our wedding, many friends distanced themselves from Jake. Being the kind of person who hates being alone, his current situation must be like hell. As for me, I've been emailing my father since then. My father, always so busy, sends me emails at irregular dates and times in bits and pieces, but he always replies. I reply too, and we've been doing this back and forth like a rally in tennis. I wish this rally could continue forever. That's about the extent of my current dreams and hopes. It feels as if the stalled time between my father and me has started moving again, and I'm wrapped in immeasurable joy. Every day I find myself loving my father more than ever before. Somehow there's a stir in the back seats. Looking closely, a man is kneeling holding a bouquet of roses. Suddenly, a live violin performance starts playing. It seems like he's going to propose. "I'll make you happy, even for my late wife," I heard my husband's voice. "Oh, that idiot," I thought, clutching my head. Applause and cheers are rising from the other customers watching. "Yes, I'd love to," I replied. "The bouquet and the ring are lovely. I'm super happy. Please take care of me forever." I heard the mistress Charlotte's clear and adorable voice. Clear voice, she must be quite moved. Her voice seems to quiver slightly. An even larger cheer erupted. I would have been moved too if it weren't for my own husband. It's the kind of proposal every girl dreams of. But no matter how many times I rubbed my eyes, the one proposing was indeed my own husband. I exchanged glances with Emily and quietly stood up, moving towards the table where my husband was. "Hello, your supposedly dead ex-wife here. Is this life number 2, perhaps? Seems I'm still in this world." The faces of my husband and Charlotte turned pale. "My name is Olivia Moore, 39. My husband John is 40, and we have one son and one daughter. Our son entered college this year. renting a place near the university and leaving home. Our daughter Emily is a freshman in high school this year. She's really enjoying her high school life, which has me worried she might go off the rails. She'd probably say I'm being overly concerned. My parents are divorced, and my mother, who raised me, had bad habits with men and alcohol, so we could never have a stable life. I didn't want my children to experience that. My life was so miserable that I decided to leave home and get married as soon as possible. So I left home as soon as I graduated from high school and married my now husband, then immediately had my son, and Emily was born 3 years later. My husband, a senior from my high school, was working in an IT startup. I've admired him since my high school days, and once I graduated, I practically moved right into his apartment. He didn't kick me out. And somehow we just went with the flow and got married because I was pregnant. We were young, had numerous big fights, and even screamed about divorcing each other several times. We've always had honest discussions with each other, and I think that's why we're still married today. There's also the fact that I didn't want our kids to experience the loneliness I felt being raised by a single parent. Back in our 20s, being young and all, my husband would leave the three of us to go out whenever his friends invited him. Both of us were busy with our work, and while I also worked as a full-time employee, I was mostly solo parenting. I wanted to raise our children to be sturdy and disciplined, so I firmly disciplined them every day. My husband probably didn't really know how to interact properly, but he didn't help with the child care. He did attend sports days and open school days, but mostly turned a blind eye to other things. Before we knew it, amid the daily hustle and bustle, the kids grew up. My son told me he got into his dream college and left the house. I was lonely and fell into a son-loss depression. Even when I tried to distract myself by talking to my husband, I was dismissed as annoying. Then, using busyness at work as an excuse, he started to be away from home more often. My husband was often away from home. He was still in his 30s and successful at work, allowing us to live comfortably without worrying about money. He lived almost like a single man, balancing work and leisure. Seeing me looking lonely, Emily started keeping me company. "Mom, do you want to go eat some yummy sweets next time?" I used to go eat them with my friends after school, and they were always super delicious. Emily managed her time with friends and also took me out. "Emily, are you sure? Wouldn't you rather hang out with your friends?" Being a high school freshman, it's common to find one's mother bothersome. I remember when I was a high school freshman, I couldn't stand my own mother. "It's okay, Mom. The other day a friend asked me if I had an older sister. They were surprised when I said it was my mom. Of course you're still in your 30s. My friend's mom had her at your current age. So I thought you needed to catch up on everything you missed until now. I was glad she grew up to be such a kind girl." Indulging in her words, I started going out with Emily more than once a month. One day, we were walking and talking about going to eat shaved ice as usual. Suddenly, Emily stopped in her tracks. Thinking she had dropped something, I asked, "What's up?" "You startled me by stopping so suddenly," but Emily was frozen, unmoving. The moment I followed her gaze, I was also stunned. There, claiming to have gone to work, was my husband, walking arm in arm with a young, cute girl in her early 20s. I usually act or speak before thinking, but this time, I too was paralyzed. It felt like I was submerged up to my chest in a dark swamp. Emily was the first to move. She said, pulling out her smartphone, "Mom, we have to follow them. We need to confirm if that's really Dad." Snapping back to reality with those words, Emily and I followed the two discreetly, making sure they didn't notice us. "He looks just like Dad. He's wearing the same clothes he wore when he said goodbye to us this morning. What's the deal with that woman? Isn't she about the same age as my brother?" Emily spoke with a genuine tone of disgust. Indeed, seeing Dad walking along, all smiles with a girl about your own age, must have been pretty revolting. I felt the same way. Seeing a husband gleefully and affectionately walk with a young girl was visibly disgraceful, and I felt my anger slowly boiling within me. I couldn't forgive my betraying husband. I was absolutely going to get revenge on the two of them. "Mom, let's go all out." Emily too was furious, and together as mother and daughter, we decided to strategize what to do next. Despite witnessing my husband's infidelity, our lives as a family of 3 didn't change much. To be honest, I was utterly disgusted at the thought of taking care of such a man, and it made me feel sick to my stomach. However, to execute our revenge, I had to pretend as though nothing was amiss. It was a considerable stress for me, but if it got out that we knew about my husband's affair, our revenge would be ruined. On the other hand, I also held a faint hope that day by day my husband would admit to his affair honestly. But such a confession would likely only come when broaching the subject of divorce. As always, my husband would come home several times a week in the middle of the night and was certain to go out claiming work or business entertainment on either Saturday or Sunday. Each time, the evidence of his infidelity piled up. As a last chance, I decided to invite my husband out to dinner. A trendy Italian place had opened up in the neighborhood, and Emily had been wanting to go there too. It was right around Halloween, and they were offering a service where, if you dressed up on Halloween Day, they would give you 30% off your meal. Since Emily's birthday is on November 5th, I also wanted to make an early reservation for an early birthday party there. I called out to my husband, who had unusually come home early. "Hey John, want to go to that Italian place for dinner on Halloween? They have a discount service if we dress up a bit. We can also have Emily's birthday party." My husband, with an uninterested look, said, "Won't it be busy that day? I don't think we need to go out on such a day unnecessarily. Let's go on her birthday." Would he really come home early on the actual birthday? Her birthday is on a Friday night, and he hasn't come home early for the past few months. Is that so? They also rent out the place for parties, so I'll check in advance, okay? It's on a Friday, but that should be all right, right? I emphasized again. My husband nonchalantly nodded and withdrew to our room, smartphone in hand. The restaurant, in fact, had a variety of full services, like renting out for parties and live music performances for birthdays. That was one of its appeals. It's a bit early for Emily's birthday, but let's book for Halloween. And then on Halloween itself, being a Sunday, my husband went out as usual. He was dressed a bit fancy today, so he's probably going to some Halloween party. Emily and I had planned to leisurely stroll around the town, decked out for Halloween. Emily might have been invited by her friends, but since I'd made a reservation at that restaurant quite early, it'd be a waste to cancel. So she chose to go out and dine with me. During the day, we went shopping, peeking into various shops, ate sweets, and strolled through the Halloween-decorated streets. As it got close to our reservation time, we dressed up for Halloween, and went to the Italian restaurant. The restaurant was also set up for Halloween and was a bit dimly lit. Most of the customers inside seemed to be in some sort of costume. The Italian restaurant lived up to its reputation. The presentation was beautiful and the taste was top-notch. It was while we were chatting, having finished up through dessert, that it happened. Somehow, there was a stir in the back seats. Looking closely, a man was kneeling, holding a bouquet of roses. Suddenly, a live violin performance started playing. It seemed like he was going to propose. It must have been the exceptional service of this restaurant that was written about in the online reviews. "Charlotte, I'll make you happy, even for my late wife," I heard my husband's voice say. "Oh, that idiot," I thought, clutching my head. Applause and cheers rose from the other customers watching. "Yes, I'd love to," Charlotte replied. "The bouquet and the ring are lovely. I'm super happy. The meal is amazing. You're amazing too. Please take care of me forever," she said, her voice quivering slightly. An even larger cheer erupted. I would have been moved too if it weren't for the fact that the one proposing was indeed my own husband. I exchanged glances with Emily and quietly stood up, moving towards the table where my husband was. "Hello, your supposedly dead ex-wife here. Is this life number 2, perhaps?" "It seems I'm still in this world," I said, causing my husband and Charlotte's faces to turn pale. They looked as if they had seen a ghost, but I was just in costume, not a resurrected zombie. "I'm not really dead. Everyone, please be at ease," I continued, as the restaurant went instantly silent. Even the violinist, who was playing live music, stopped. "Who are you?" my husband asked, still trying to play dumb. "My wife is deceased, I'm afraid," he said, causing my pent-up anger to explode. "You idiot! I exclaimed, slapping him hard across the face. He seemed completely bewildered. Having a bouquet and proposing on one knee was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime big play, but suddenly, with his wife and daughter showing up, the stage was turned 180 degrees. I thought to myself, I was a bit stuck on the fact that he hadn't proposed to me in such an elaborate way, but now I need a proper explanation more than that. Don't just send people to heaven on your own. Who is this woman? Were you cheating? I asked, my voice filled with anger and hurt. It seems he had forgotten how scary I can be when angry, because I had been so calm at home recently. My husband was frozen, astonished that his affair was discovered, and unable to move under my barrage of insults. He wasn't unconscious, but he didn't seem to comprehend what was happening in front of him. His mind must be in utter panic. He would never have dreamed that Emily and I would be here. What's going on, John? Didn't you say about 6 months ago that your wife had passed away and you were so lonely you couldn't stand it? His mistress looked a bit older than Emily, but still in her early 20s. She had a somewhat flashy appearance with modern makeup and was dressed head to toe in obviously high-end brands. Surprised? Sorry, you loose woman. Unfortunately for you, I'm very much alive and kicking, and not even sick. What do you mean, sticking your hands into someone else's husband? That's right, I knew everything. I worked at a friend's law firm and had a detective acquaintance investigate her. Although she had heard about it half a year ago, I heard that she had been dating my husband for almost a year. Hey, just an old lady. Johnny said I'm cuter. And look, this bag, he bought it for me for my birthday. Nice, right? Bet you and your daughter have never gotten anything like this, huh? Charlotte was completely defiant. It's true, Emily and I had never received such expensive gifts. We're not interested in luxury brands and have never wanted to buy them, but if my husband actually bought the bag because he was begged to, that's a big problem. Even though we are not struggling with money now, it's unthinkable to gift a bag that costs several $1,000s. I was momentarily lost for words at that. See, I'm the one who is loved more. Too bad for you, old lady. John buys me anything I say I want. She began to boast as if this was her moment. I was simply infuriated. Is this bratty little girl more important than me? My head started spinning with shock and anger. I have a habit since way back that when I get furious, I grind my teeth. Even now, I was on the verge of grinding my teeth hard. Huh, Charlotte? You're Sophia's older sister, right? Do you remember? We used to play with Sophia back in the day, didn't we? Emily interjected with a surprised voice from the side. Sophia mentioned she's been feeling lonely since her sister ran away from home. You know? What a coincidence to meet you here. Even Charlotte, who is normally composed, was left dumbfounded. She must be surprised to be suddenly spoken to. Moreover, suddenly Emily and I became acquaintances, and she even called me a runaway girl. Sophia, the friend Emily mentioned to Charlotte, has been her best friend since 8th grade. Speaking of which, I remembered that this spring, Emily had expressed her concern about her best friend's sister running away from home. What? I don't know anyone named Sophia. And of course, I don't know you either. Both you and your daughter look like idiots. Charlotte, who had regained her composure, retorted to Emily, but she couldn't hide her agitation. John, what do you think you're doing pursuing such a young girl? Think about your age. It's disgusting. My husband, who had been wide-eyed and looking around during the argument, suddenly panicked when he noticed all eyes on him. He probably couldn't think of how to handle the situation. The excuse he desperately thought of spilled out of his mouth. No, well, you see, she just said she wanted to experience a romantic proposal like this one, so I indulged her. There's no way. I'm serious, right? The only person I love is Olivia? He seemed to have made the decision to abandon Charlotte. He probably wanted to avoid disillusioning his daughter Emily, who was watching as much as possible. Shut up. Divorce it is. It's obvious, isn't it? What's this I love you now? There's no way I can believe that. If it were possible to knock someone down with a gaze, without a doubt, I would have knocked down my husband John and Charlotte with mine. With the word divorce out there, I became a little calmer. The other customers around us were staring at us, wondering what was going to happen. Then a loud voice echoed, Hey John, what the hell are you doing? It was John's company's CEO. In fact, I had already spoken to the CEO about the situation, having my husband's return home time and communication logs. Everything was under control. Being the CEO of an IT startup, he was skilled in computer operations and played a crucial role in gathering evidence of adultery. I might be pretty laid back, but I believe a man who doesn't value his family is not trustworthy. Family is the only thing you can rely on in the end, not money or work. My husband knew that, and he always took me and the kids to company events. So when I first consulted him about my husband's affair, the CEO didn't take it seriously. However, when I showed the CEO evidence photos collected by the detective and asked for his cooperation, he immediately agreed. This is a mistake. You heard what I said, right? This is all just a charade to fulfill her wishes. John tried to talk his way out of it, trying to persuade the CEO while breaking out into a cold sweat. But such superficial excuses were never going to work on the CEO. You're so stubborn, John. I've forgiven work mistakes until now, but I can't forgive such ethically wrong behavior. My husband realized that nothing could be done and dropped his shoulders. It seemed like he finally understood that his careless actions led to the worst possible outcome. It's cowardly to propose to another woman without even bringing up divorce to me. I was thoroughly disgusted with my spineless husband. Oh well, the worst. Johnny, it's unfortunate, but goodbye. I can't get married with this going on. I'll take the engagement ring as compensation for emotional distress. Charlotte, who had given up easily, grabbed several bags with brand names on them, presumably bought for her by my husband today, and the engagement ring in its box, and promptly tried to leave. Hold on, Charlotte Taylor. There's a warrant out for your arrest on various charges. Charlotte turned around with a start. What, Mr. Detective? What have I done? Though she spoke boldly, her hands were visibly trembling, perhaps out of nervousness. A detective acquaintance found out quickly during investigating my husband's affair that Charlotte was dating many men regardless of age. Moreover, every time she met someone, she was showered with money and branded goods. It seems she also went around brand shops with older men. At night, she seemed to work at a cabaret club, and perhaps due to being favored by customers who requested her, she lived in a luxury apartment. She often seduced men by hinting at marriage and even seemed to engage in marriage fraud-like activities. The detective, hearing from the men who were dumped and alarmed by the severity, advised reporting to the police, leading to the issuance of a warrant this time. Wait, police? I haven't done anything illegal. Changing your mind about marriage happens, and if he won't divorce his wife, I'll give up and have to take compensation. Make them pay for it and then abandon them? It's give and take in this world. I can't spend time with useless people. It's a waste. She was an utterly terrifying woman, showing not a shred of remorse. It seemed she didn't think at all that she had hurt so many people. It must have been easy to make a sucker out of my husband. Just wave sweet words and rewards in front of him, and he'd do whatever you wanted, whether it be clothes, bags, cosmetics, or dinner at a luxury hotel. That being said, I have no intention of forgiving my husband's infidelity. We'll take it slow and talk at the station, young lady. Even if it doesn't turn into a criminal case, I'm sure the IRS will want to hear a lot from you too. Upon hearing the word IRS, even Charlotte paled considerably. She may never have paid taxes. Especially with the romantic business and the things received by seducing, it would probably be audited if scrutinized. Johnny, this time, since I can't get married because of you, I'm gonna sue you for emotional distress damages. And because I had to reduce my work hours because of it, I'll be asking for business suspension compensation too. Her tenacity regarding money deserves praise. There might not be many people who can think that far. But I have something to say too. That's right. Then I will sue you for emotional distress damages. You knew you were having an affair, didn't you? So I can claim too. Charlotte visibly paled even more. Although it might be a minor offense, it seems like she'll be caught by the police and likely face back taxes from the IRS, and on top of that being required to pay emotional distress damages, she finally broke down. Demand emotional distress damages from me. Say it to Johnny, because he persistently chased after me, who was unwilling. He got carried away on his own. deciding on presents and marriage. I just went along with that nonsense. Although she's desperately making excuses, she joyfully accepted the proposal in front of so many people, so those excuses won't work. Just when I thought the excuses would go on forever, the police detective asked her to come voluntarily, and she was taken to the police station. Of course, saying he needed to hear the circumstances, my husband was also taken with her. I, feeling the string of tension snap and with my adrenaline also exhausted, slumped down on the spot. The CEO and Emily squatted down beside me, worrying if I was okay. Ever since Emily and I caught my husband in the act of cheating, I had been planning for this day. I'm truly glad that the operation was successful. I feel like jumping up and dancing, but I'm completely exhausted. Mom, it's good that you were able to punish them both firmly. Dad wouldn't have realized he was neglecting you without facing harsh consequences. Thinking that such a woman is better is in itself ridiculous, I think. Emily comforted me. Emily's right. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the inconvenience caused by our foolish employee. If anyone feels that their wonderful dinner has been ruined, I'll provide my business card. Please contact me directly. Sir, regarding the damages, I'll have the person in question take care of it, so please contact us when you have time. The CEO addressed the other customers who were watching with keen interest loudly. I can't thank the CEO enough. I expressed my gratitude to the CEO several times and returned home. The next night, my husband returned home. He seemed to have been thoroughly questioned by the police and learned his lesson. He apologized to me as soon as he saw my face, but of course, I have no intention of forgiving him. I just had him sign the prepared divorce papers and told him to leave the house with only his immediate belongings. My husband said, "Isn't it too cruel to make me leave with nowhere to go?" and seemed to be angry, but he shut his mouth with one glare from Emily. He packed his things and left the house. Afterwards, my attorney will handle the negotiations, but I'm supposed to receive property division consolation money and child support from my husband. He has spent almost all of his discretionary money on Charlotte, so it's arranged to be paid in installments from his monthly salary all through the company's CEO. Charlotte managed to settle everything and somehow avoided prosecution, but despite selling all her branded bags and clothes to make money, it doesn't seem to be enough. The Taylor family was in turmoil over the shenanigans their daughter pulled off, rather than feeling joy over finding her. They fronted the consolation money that their daughter couldn't pay, for me. Regarding taxes, they had her pay them herself, and once that was done, it seems like she's going to repay the fronted amount to her family home. I didn't want to impose on Emily's best friend's family either, but there's nothing I can do about this. Sophia also told me that Emily and Emily's mom are not to blame, and I think that alone was a relief. But still, it seems like their friendship has crumbled, and the Taylors are moving out. Emily, though disappointed about Sophia, has made a new best friend in high school and seems to be enjoying her youth. I also owe a lot to my workplace this time, so I'm working hard to repay the favor as much as possible. Although I can't become an attorney, I'm thinking of briskly doing what I can as an assistant. My son supported me fully, even though it was a post-factum report. He patted me on the back, saying, "It's going to be okay because I'm a young, proud mom." I feel like I've had enough of marriage, but life is still ahead of me. Once the kids are independent, I'm thinking of challenging various things. While I was shopping, my phone rang. It was from Kevin. When I answered, I could hear Kevin's surprised voice. "You're alive, huh? I heard your house burned down." I did hear sirens earlier, but I had no idea it was my own house that was on fire. "I heard a woman was severely burned. Are you okay?" I replied, "I'm shopping right now. There shouldn't be anyone at home." Kevin asked, "What? Wasn't it you who was taken away?" The tone in Kevin's voice wasn't relief, but disappointment. But to my disappointment, Kevin definitely knows something about this fire. I had a gut feeling. I have a lot of questions for you, but I'll wait to ask them. I'm going to go check on my house. It was the home I vowed to make warm and welcoming, and now it's gone. I've been patient all this time, but if Kevin ever meant to harm me, I won't let him get away with it. Sooner or later, people like Kevin will get what's coming to them. If that's the case, I might just be the one to send him there. My fury is unstoppable now. My name is Jessica. I'm just your average single 40-year-old office worker. Well, maybe not so average. I'm a huge fan of John, a member of a boy band called Kiss Me Prince. I spend most of my monthly paycheck supporting him. John has this younger brother vibe with a soothing appearance. I record every show he's on. And if there's a concert, I'm at my computer 10 minutes before ticket sales begin, ready to fight for them. My family and relatives think it's silly, but only true fans can understand this euphoria. I should have been content as long as I had my favorite idol. However, this year, the last of my close friends from college got married. Looking around, I'm the only one left single. The reality I've been avoiding hit me hard. Unable to bear my loneliness any longer, I impulsively signed up for a dating app. And I decided to attend a matchmaking party hosted by the dating app. At that very first party, I was destined to meet someone special. Is that you, John? From a distance, there was a young man who looked just like John. As soon as the mingling started, I went straight up to him without a second thought. "Excuse me, you're John from Kiss Me Prince, right?" The man chuckled amusedly. People often say I look like him. So I kind of styled my hair and aura to match him. His name was Stephen Thompson, and he was 35, 5 years younger than me. But he looked youthful, like he could pass for someone in his late 20s. Being a self-proclaimed fan of pop stars, I was totally smitten with Stephen. And the feeling was mutual. We were a match. He always treated me like I was one of his fans, making me feel special every date. I saw John in him and was utterly infatuated. Looking back, it seemed a bit off that such a charming guy would choose a 40-year-old like me, but at the time I was completely oblivious. Soon enough, he formally proposed to me. Moreover, he proposed at the very spot where John had proposed to the lead actress in a TV show. I was head over heels and said yes without hesitation. However, right before we were about to make it official, Stephen showed up for a date with a high schooler. Actually, I have a son that I live with. The boy he introduced as his son, Kevin, had a different vibe from Stephen and was quite reserved. He was 17, a high school junior. He wore thick glasses and had unkempt hair. Looking a bit gloomy, he kept his head down and didn't make eye contact with me. "I should have told you earlier, Jessica. I'm sorry." His apology seemed so genuine, mirroring John's style, that it tugged at my maternal instincts. "It's all right." I was totally lovesick. Then I overheard Kevin muttering under his breath, "Another old hag." I couldn't believe my ears. "What?" He said it so naturally that I thought I must have misheard. I tried to ask Kevin again, but Stephen cut me off. "Kevin seems happy about having a new mom. Thanks for being there." Stephen and I talked about the wedding right there. Eventually, we decided to get married. I had been living in a single-story house with lots of empty rooms, so I asked him to move in. To be more precise, the rooms weren't exactly empty. They were filled with tons of fan merchandise. But now I get to live with my real-life idols. I decided to leave all my precious merchandise back at my parents' house. It was a major decision for me. As I carefully packed away my beloved Kiss Me Prince fan merchandise into boxes to send to my parents' house, I vowed to focus on building a warm home and putting aside my fan life for a while. When Stephen and Kevin moved in, I thought our happy family life as a trio was about to start, but that wasn't the case. Stephen often said he was swamped with work and would stay over at his office 2 or 3 times a week. That left gloomy Kevin and me at home. Kevin rarely made eye contact or spoke to me. He hardly ever went out except for high school, spending most of his time locked in his room playing video games. During meals, he'd mumble just loud enough for me to hear complaints like, "The meat is tough," or "This can't be called cooking." I get that kids will be kids, but I was concerned that a high school junior like Kevin was always gaming and not focusing on his studies or career planning. One night, when Stephen returned home late, I tried to discuss it with him. "Have you talked to Kevin about his future plans?" Stephen replied with an air of annoyance. "I'm leaving it up to Kevin. He should do what he wants." I told Stephen I hadn't seen any signs of Kevin job hunting or studying, but Stephen wasn't receptive. "Look, Jessica, can't you see? It's late, I just got home. I'm beat. Can you not add to my stress by bringing up pointless stuff? Even if Steven's tired, isn't he worried about his own child's future? Why am I, someone who was once a stranger to Kevin, the only one worried? I felt like that, but I didn't voice it out any further. It saddened me how Steven, who once treated his fans so warmly, was now treating me like I was a nuisance. Then one day, Kevin unexpectedly brought a girl home. She's a quiet-looking girl wearing glasses, just like Kevin. I honestly thought he wouldn't be popular, but maybe she's his girlfriend now? After eating and drinking in the living room, they whispered to each other for a while, and then left the house again. Honestly, it made me more nervous than them. Until recently, I never even considered becoming a mother. Now, I wonder if I'll have to give the talk about the birds and the bees to these teenagers. My mind was full of such thoughts, so when they peacefully left, I felt a huge relief. From the second-floor window, I quietly watched Kevin and the girl walk away together. That's when I noticed her. Through the fence of the neighboring house, there was a woman glaring at me. I was so terrified that I froze on the spot. The woman then disappeared behind the fence. I wanted to consult with Steven right away, but he didn't come home that night. Just thinking about the woman's gaze from earlier scared me, and I had a hard time falling asleep. Maybe it was the stress, but I caught a bad cold the next day. I dragged my tired body to work, did household chores while Kevin complained, and when I finally laid down at night, Steven came home. I sat up intending to discuss the woman I saw during the day. But as soon as Steven saw the serious look on my face, he frowned. Is it another complaint about Kevin? It's not a complaint. By the way, it seems like Kevin has a girlfriend now. At that, Steven smiled smugly. For a moment, his smile, which reminded me of John's, comforted me. But that was until I heard Steven's next words. Well, he is my son after all. I did teach him all the tricks to woo easy girls. Easy girls? I echoed his words, and Steven quickly added, No, I just told him some tips on how to charm a girl he likes. He then gently patted my head. Thanks for always working hard for me. I appreciate it. When we were dating, I used to find such gestures endearing. However, now I couldn't help but doubt. Does he think I'm an easy girl too? Was I just played? But for what reason? I'm just an office worker. Not like I make big bucks or have any significant assets. After Steven took a bath, I double-checked his wallet just to be safe, but I didn't find any suspicious receipts. Still, for some reason, I had this bad gut feeling, and my suspicion toward Steven grew. In the end, I never got to talk to him about that woman. When I woke up the next morning, Steven had already gone to work. As I was heading downstairs to make breakfast, I smelled the lovely aroma of sizzling sausages coming from the kitchen. This hadn't happened since we got married. To my surprise, when I entered the kitchen, Kevin was preparing breakfast for me: sausages, fried eggs, salad, and some yogurt. He had even prepared some coffee for me. Isn't this something? What brought this on? Kevin replied, avoiding eye contact and speaking softly. You've been feeling under the weather, right? Thought I'd make you some breakfast, that's all. It was the first time I felt a warm gesture from Kevin. I was touched. Thank you, I said, feeling a bit embarrassed. Kevin ignored me and dunked the frying pan in the sink. It seemed like he wasn't going to do the dishes, but I'll take what I can get. I'm off to school, Kevin said, grabbing his bag and heading out the door. Relishing the moment, I sat down at the dining table. Any homemaker knows the significance of even a simple meal made with care. Planning to enjoy every bite, I reached for the coffee first, but accidentally knocked over the glass in my excitement. All the coffee Kevin poured for me was spilled all over the table. Oh my, I'm such a klutz, I exclaimed. I felt a bit bad, but my spirits weren't dampened. I quickly wiped the table, and after finishing the meal, I felt refreshed. Right, I need to go grocery shopping. We're out of detergent. Maybe I'll walk to the discount store a bit further away, I thought to myself. I decided to walk to a supermarket further than I usually would. On my way, I passed a fire truck, which made me feel a bit uneasy. I hoped that whatever house it was heading to would get the fire out safely. With those thoughts, I went into the grocery store and my phone vibrated. It was a call from Kevin. When I answered, I could hear Kevin's surprised voice. You're alive, huh? He said. Alive? What's he talking about? I wondered. As I was pondering this, Kevin dropped a bombshell. I heard your house has burned down. I saw it on social media. What? I exclaimed. I did hear sirens earlier, but I had no idea it was my own house that was on fire. I heard a woman was severely burned. Are you okay? I asked, concerned. What could it be? There was something cold and distant in Kevin's voice, mocking even. Huh? I'm shopping right now. There shouldn't be anyone at home, I said, confused. What? Wasn't it you who was taken away? Then I remembered Steven's comment. I did teach him all the tricks to woo easy girls. Kevin definitely knew something about this fire. I had a gut feeling. I've got a lot to ask you, but that'll wait. I'm gonna go check on my house. I hung up and started running. I hailed a cab, and when I arrived, my house was completely burned down. A crowd had gathered in front of the wreckage. A neighbor, Margaret, approached me frantically. Oh, thank God you're okay. They took a young girl in a school uniform to Hillside Emergency Hospital. Do you know her? I didn't have the confidence to answer that question. The only person I could think of was the girl Kevin was with the other day. The police stopped me. They wanted to talk later, since there might be foul play. For now, I got into another cab and headed to Hillside Emergency Hospital. As I was swayed in the back seat, tears started to well up in my eyes. It was the home I vowed to make warm and welcoming, and now it's gone. And Kevin's attitude on the phone earlier is still bothering me. If he intended to let my guard down with superficial kindness this morning only to harm me later, I'm never going to be fooled again. Sooner or later, people like Kevin will get what's coming to them. If that's the case, I might just be the one to send him there. My fury's unstoppable now. At the hospital, I tried to explain my situation and asked for a visit. But they kept insisting it's private information, and I wasn't allowed to see the young girl who was brought from my house. Helplessly, I sat down in the lobby when a frantic woman rushed in. Where's Sarah? I saw on the news that she's in critical condition. It's okay. The news got it wrong. She's got burns on her face and limbs, but her life isn't in danger. I was taken aback. I knew this woman. She's the one who had glared at me from over the fence that day. Noticing me, she pulled out her business card and handed it to me. My name is Michelle Thompson. I'm Steven's wife and Kevin and Sarah's mother. Shocked, I blurted out, "But I'm Steven's wife," Michelle tried to explain, but she seemed to prioritize visiting her daughter. "Jessica, please come with us." In the hospital room, the girl who had come to my house that day as Kevin's girlfriend lay there. As soon as she saw me, she burst into tears. I'm so sorry. As Michelle comforted her, Sarah, sobbing, began to recount the events. Turns out, Sarah wasn't Kevin's girlfriend, she was his younger sister. She'd always looked up to her quiet but kind-hearted older brother since they were kids. But at one point he changed. Apparently, he learned from his father how to manipulate gullible women. After that, Kevin hardly ever came home. It was because he was living with me, but he had told Sarah he was living with a different woman. Living with a convenient woman. On the rare occasions he did come home, Sarah could only watch as he constantly spouted derogatory comments about women, wishing he'd go back to his old self. How can I get my kind big brother back? When she asked Kevin, he replied, I want you to set fire to Dad's mistress Jessica's house. Being influenced by Kevin, Sarah scouted out my house as I was the alleged mistress. That's why she came to my house that day. After much hesitation, thinking it was for her brother, she went through with it. But after setting the fire, she immediately felt the weight of her guilt and called the police. And to save me, who was supposedly sleeping inside, she broke the window, went in, and got injured. Wait, what do you mean supposedly sleeping inside? To my question, Sarah replied through her tears, Kevin was going to put sleeping pills in your coffee. I felt a chill run down my spine. If I hadn't spilled the coffee, I probably wouldn't be okay now. Michelle scolded Sarah in a state of panic, and then apologized to me. What a stupid thing to do. You could have killed someone. Jessica, I'm so sorry. It's due to our lack of supervision as parents. I can't believe what Kevin and Sarah did. Talking about that, I began addressing the concern that had been nagging at me. Legally, Kevin was going to be my child now. We decided to get married. At this, Michelle hesitantly took out a piece of paper from her bag. It was Stephen's marriage certificate. Indeed, Michelle's name was written there. My husband had previously deceived another woman in the same way. He must have deceived you. I realized she was right. So the engagement should be invalid due to bigamy. The unbelievable reality made me dizzy. Why would Stephen do such a thing? Michelle let out a deep sigh. Deep wrinkles on her forehead revealed years of hardships. Jessica, by any chance, are you a fan of John from Kiss Me Prince? My husband is oddly confident and obsessed with the idea that he looks like John. He mimics John's fashion, hairstyle, and gestures and gets a kick out of approaching and flirting with his fans. He probably can't help wanting to be adored by women like an idol. I've had enough of it. At that moment, the door to the room swung open, and Stephen, looking pale, entered. Seeing me and Michelle together, Stephen looked caught. I glared at him, anger evident in my eyes, and said, "So, we were strangers all along. You said you'd be staying at work, but you went back to your wife's house?" Stephen rambled on, but I wasn't listening. "I'm going to claim compensation, including for the house your son burned down. Since we're not related, you can't claim familial immunity." Grabbing my bag, I stormed out of the room. Behind me, I could hear Michelle and Stephen arguing. I vowed not to let this end so easily and returned to my parents' house. Later on, Kevin was arrested by the police. I had requested that Sarah not be arrested, so she was able to return home after being discharged from the hospital. However, scars remained on Sarah's face from the burns. The emotional scars inflicted by her brother might never heal. She now has to live with the guilt and the scars on her face, so I thought there was no need for additional punishment. On the other hand, I intend to have Kevin properly penalized by the authorities. Kevin is turning 18 soon. He's likely to be tried as an adult under the law. As I was preparing the claim for compensation, someone knocked at the door. It was Stephen. "Jessica, I'm truly sorry about Kevin. Can't we start over? I want you to support me again." "Can you give me your fan energy? Can you give me your fan energy?" was John's signature phrase during his concerts. Before, I would have been easily swayed. But now it just seemed like mockery. You're not an idol. You're just a 35-year-old man who thinks he looks like one. If you don't realize it, you're going to keep embarrassing yourself. As I said this, Stephen's face turned red with a mix of shame and anger, and he lunged at me. "What's your problem? You probably just saw me as a substitute for John anyway." I can't say I was entirely without fault. But Stephen, despite manipulating the situation, acted as if I was the one to blame. "That's right. And I realized you're neither John nor my dream prince. You're just a delusional middle-aged man." I handed Stephen the prepared compensation claim. "The recent arson was the result of your flawed upbringing. You're going to take full responsibility. I'll add to the claim for the time you deceived me. If not, I'll sue you for marriage fraud." Stephen came to me begging to get back together, but instead, he was hit with a counterclaim for alimony and was utterly defeated. The always self-centered Stephen, in his disappointment, left like that. Perhaps the threat of suing him for marriage fraud worked, because after that, Stephen transferred an amount greater than the usual alimony in one lump sum. This must have drained Stephen's savings. Word has it that he was also divorced by Michelle. For a while, it'll be tough for him to maintain that idol-like hairstyle and fashion due to being broke. As for Kevin, he was tried as an adult under the penal code and was sentenced to prison. During the trial, with his obstinate attitude showing, it became clear that he was responsible for the arson and he was rightfully punished for his actions. Attitude showing no signs of remorse. He seemed to blame all his crimes on me, which probably didn't sit well with the jury, leading to an even heavier sentence than usual. Of course, he was expelled from high school. Kevin's wrongdoings became well known in the community, and it's unlikely he can continue to live there after he gets out. In the evening, I bought a few flashlights and headed to the park. Fashionably dressed girls were there, waving their hands and glow sticks eagerly, waiting for the much-awaited Kiss Me Prince concert. I pulled out my old fan merchandise and resumed being an active fan. Going to concerts with female friends I got close to through fandom activities is now the highlight of my life. Having an idol out of reach is what makes it exciting. Vowing never to make the same mistake again, I was off to the concert venue.